Hello, my dear friends. First, I want to apologize for not having sent out a video for the past 2 weeks before Shabbos. I was just incredibly busy. Actually, yesterday before Shabbos, I tried to record a video. I finished it almost right before Shabbos. It was too late to email it then. And then when I listened to it this evening, I thought maybe I'll modify it a little bit. So I'm recording now. A thought that relates to the Yom Noraim. We worked very hard for 6 weeks. We went through Elul, and then then Rosh Hashanah, and Seres Tshuva, and Yom Kippur. The question is, what are we taking away from that? What identify something that we're taking away? So, unfortunately, we know it's very hard to pinpoint anything that we were inspired and everything, but it's very hard to say, well, this is what I changed, and this is as a result of this experience, this is how I'm different. So I have a suggestion to make. When I was a child, I was intrigued always by the Yom Kippur Avoda, the sacrifices that are, in Musaf, we recount the sacrifices that were brought on Yom Kippur. And one of the sacrifices was that the Kohen Gadol would go into the Kachim, the holy, and take the blood and sprinkle it on the curtain. And he would sprinkle 1 time on top of the curtain, the parochas, 7 times at the bottom. So in the text of the Machzor, we say, V'kacha Mona, and this is how the Kohen Gadol counted. Achas v'achas. That means 1 and 1. Achas v'shtayim, 1 and 2. Achas v'shalosh, 1 and 3. All the way up to Achas v'shiva, 1 and 7. So as a child, I didn't understand that. What are we saying? 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3. What's that all about? As I got older, I learned the Gemara in Yuma, which explains that the Kohen Gadol had to sprinkle 1 on top, 7 on the bottom, and he didn't want to get confused. He could be in the middle and not remember where we up to. So therefore, he would count out loud. And in order not to think that maybe the first one that he sprinkled on top, maybe that was on the bottom, so he counted separately. Achas v'achas, 1 on top and 1 on the bottom. Achas v'shtayim. Then when he sprinkled the second time on the bottom, he would say achas v'shtayim, 1 and 2. And then when he sprinkled the third time, 1 and 3, all the way up to achas v'sheva, 1 and 7. That's the plain explanation for what the Kohen Gadol is saying. But homiletically, I would like to suggest the following thought. The Kohen Gadol goes into the holy, to the Kachim, and he goes afterwards into the Kachi Kadashim. It's a super inspiring experience for the Kohen Gadol. And no doubt, there was many thoughts in his mind of changes that he is going to make in his life, because after experiencing such closeness to the Ribono Shel Olam, it's impossible that it didn't leave an impression on him. Nonetheless, the Kohen Gadol recognized, and that's why he counts this way, that it's very, very difficult to sustain changes. And the best thing to do is to limit how much you want to change. If you bite off too much at one time, it won't last. Better to make a strong commitment to do a little than to make a big commitment to do a lot of things, which will never come to fruition. The truth is that it's one should even limit it to one thing, because one thing is the most manageable that there could be. And you choose something simple and limit it to one thing. So that's exactly what the Kohen Gadol said. Achas v'achas. He experiences 7 times, means that 7 different levels of elevation that he goes through during the Avodah Yom Kippur. But nonetheless, he decides, he picks one thing. So it's achas v'achas. He's inspired for one thing. Okay, so now he says, achas, I have one thing. Then achas u'shtayim. Now he's inspired at 2 areas. But he says, you know what? The firm commitment, I'll try to do both things. But the firm commitment remains in achas. Achas v'shalosh. Then he decides, I have 3 things that I want to tackle. But he still says, achas v'shalosh. The real commitment is limited to achas, to 1. And all the way up to 7, achas v'sheva. 7 things that he has in his mind, all sorts of plans, and he's going to do this and he's going to do that. he will try. No doubt, he'll do the best effort he can. But in terms of commitment still remains achas v'sheva, only one out of all seven. Now, maybe you'll say to me, where do you get this from? Who said this? Who said that it's good to limit your commitment? Isn't it better to have broad commitment? So I think it's a Gemara in Makos. The end of Makos, the Gemara says that there were Taryag mitzvos, 613 mitzvos. The Gemara says, strange thing. But David, the Hamidam al Achadasar, David decided to reduce the Taryag mitzvahs to 11. Then Yeshaya reduced it even more to 6. Then Micha reduced it to 3. Until finally Chavakuk reduced it to 1. Tzaddik Memunasa Yichya, that Tzaddik lives by his emunah. What does it mean? They reduced the mitzvahs. How could you do that? How could you? And the Gemara explains what it is, which mitzvahs David reduced it to, and Yeshaya and Micha. But what does that mean? They reduced it to 613 mitzvahs. So what I would say is, the Gemara is saying that they needed to have a primary focus. So David made the primary focus 613 mitzvahs. It's just too broad. David said, let's limit it to 11. Then Yeshaya says, still too much. 6. Micha said, let's strive for 3. Until finally Chavakuk, who was at the end of the period of Nevi'im, Chavakuk said, you know what? Bo Chavakuk ve'amida malachas. The same achas that we have with the Kohen Gadol. Amida malachas, he said, let's do one thing. Emunah. Tzadik ben Menasa Yichya. Because that's doable. Perhaps that's what David HaMelech means when he says, Achas sha'alti me'es Hashem osav achish. There's one thing that I asked from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shifti be'es Hashem kol yemei chayei, that I should dwell in the house of the Lord all of the days of my life. Again, it's the achas, because David recognized, if I'm going to try to do a lot of things, it's not going to work. He limited it to achas sha'alti. One thing I'm asking, and that's something that I could focus on, and that is doable. So I would suggest that going away from Yom Kippur, we have to ask ourselves, what achas can we take away? There has to be at least one achas. It shouldn't be difficult to come up with one thing that we want to do better in the coming year. And we could try to do other things too. And on Yom Kippur, we thought we're going to improve all our midas are going to get better. We give more tzedakah. We're going to daven better with all these things. Okay, wonderful. Try. No, nobody says you shouldn't try. But in terms of commitment, there's got to be, like the Kohen Gadol said, achas v'achas, achas v'shtayim, achas v'sheva. Even though there was 7 things going on in his mind. But it's the real commitment was for achas. Achas sha'alti me'es Hashem. David said only one thing. Because it had to be focus. What one thing should you think about? Should you focus on? It's up to you. Every person is different. I'll share with you a few thoughts of maybe what an achas might be. One achas, I tell you, when I come home in the morning from davening, I have to catch a train to go to Manhattan. I have 5 minutes to eat breakfast, and then my car ride comes, and I have to leave for the train. While I'm eating breakfast for 5 minutes, I'm doing this already for 38 years, I have a Seder. I choose a Sefer, and I have a bookmark, and every day I learn the Sefer for 5 minutes. Usually it's inspirational Sfarim. I'll read biographies, I'll read Musar Sfarim. You know that over the years, with a 5-minute Seder, I was able to finish a whole bunch of Sfarim and biographies and books. 5 minutes, that's all it took. Anybody could make a commitment to learn for 5 minutes. 5 minutes at the breakfast table. I have my bowl of cereal, and while I'm eating my shredded wheat, 5 minutes I spend reading a sefer. That's inspirational. Anybody could do that. You all could do that. Here's a second idea. I talked about this 100 times. Give people compliments. Give 1 compliment a day. Not 2, not 3. You want to give more, because to hate, that's fine. But commitment, give at least 1 compliment a day. Say something nice to somebody. 1 compliment a day. That's easy to do, not hard. Another idea, when we all work in offices, when we walk into the office, say hello to the people that are there. Oftentimes, people who are, especially people who are in more senior positions, they'll fly into the office, and there are people sitting on this side and that side. They don't even notice. They just go, zoom. Say hello to people. You know what a big difference it makes? Makes a person feel like they're a mensch. Whether it's a secretary, or whether it's a maintenance person, or whether it's a coworker. Say hello. That's a good achas. It's not a lot of things to do. Okay, you say hello to a few people, but it's all the same idea. Achas. Say hello to the people that you're working with. It'll make their day. It'll know that you consider them to be special and important. Another possibility is Lashon Hara is so destructive, but it's hard to tackle Lashon Hara the whole day. So there's a concept of machsum lefi. Take a small period of time and don't speak Lashon Hara during that period of time. And you shouldn't speak Lashon Hara at all. But if you can't help it, at least make a commitment for a small period of time. An hour a day. And don't choose 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's a good time. 1 hour a day. We could all do that. It's not hard to do 1 hour a day. You know what happens if you do 1 hour a day? So then eventually you expect, now that I've done it, I could do 2 hours a day. And eventually you build it up. You never speak Lashon Hara. But start with 1 hour a day. I'm throwing out just some simple examples of an achas that's doable. It's easy. I'm not suggesting that you should learn through Shas, or you should write 25 Svarim. Just one simple thing. Say hello to the people in your office. Spend 5 minutes learning a sefer. And you know what? It doesn't. If you prefer, it could be during lunchtime. It doesn't have to be by breakfast. You eat lunch at work. You're entitled to spend 5 private moments. You could learn your sefer for 5 minutes during lunchtime. Whatever it is, the point is achas. That's the key. Achas sha'alti. David says, there's one thing that I'm asking for. One thing that I need to do. Habakkuk said, let's reduce the Taryag mitzvahs to a focus of one thing. That one thing incorporates everything else, because it's Sadik Ben Yichya. The whole basis of Yahadis is Emunah. But the focus, instead of focusing on every single mitzvah, focus on developing Emunah, and that's something doable. And you know what? If you have an achas, when you finish your Yom Kippur, if you commit to an achas and you stick with it, what you're doing basically is extending the impact of the yontif. It's like you're taking the yontif with you, because your commitment 2 months later, 3 months later, is all a continuation of the experience of yontif. And that way, the inspiration of yontif also stays fresh in your mind, because it led to something practical. So there was a concrete accomplishment from the yontif, so that makes you still feel connected to the yontif. So I hope that each one of us will figure out which achas is good for us. But let's at least commit to one achas, and in that way, the yontif every year, every year you do a new achas. But at least this way, every year the yontif will be meaningful.